Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, please hit that sub button and join the family. We're so close to 30,000 subs, and you can make that possible. Smash that like button if you enjoyed today's stories.
Disclaimer on reading materials. The stories are carefully crafted, altered, and embellished by our team. This is to abide by YouTube's policies on reading materials. We hold sole intellectual rights to these stories as original content. It started when one of my friends texted me a screenshot of an RSVP list for some random house party. I wasn't going, but I saw my full name on the guest list. I didn't even remember being invited. Then I read the name again and realized the email attached wasn't mine. At first, I thought it was some kind of typo. But then I saw more screenshots coming in from different people, snap stories, tagged Instagram posts, group chats. And there it was again, my name attached to someone who clearly wasn't me. Turns out it was Kara. We had broken up like 4 months before all that started. It wasn't even some toxic screaming match type breakup. She just got super clingy after we moved into different apartments. And I started feeling like I couldn't breathe. I told her we needed space, and she acted cool about it. Way too cool, now that I think about it. She started slowly creeping back into my life in the most indirect way possible. Not by texting me or showing up or anything obvious like that. She went after my friends. The people I hung out with, the people who knew both of us, even the ones who barely talked to her when we were together. She would show up to parties, kickbacks, bar meetups, sometimes even before I got there, and introduce herself as me. She literally changed her name, like legally. Full government ID change. Same first name, same last name, even the same middle initial. It wasn't just a weird joke or a social media thing. She really did it. People thought it was funny at first, like a joke gone a little too far. She'd laugh it off and say stuff like, well, I always liked that name better. And everyone just kind of brushed it aside. But I knew what she was doing. She wasn't trying to be me. She was trying to erase me and replace me. Things got weirder when I started getting texts from people asking if I had been at some event I wasn't at, or if I was dating some girl I'd never met, or if I'd made out with some guy at a concert. I hadn't even gone to the concert. All of this confusion was happening because Kiera was walking around town being me. The scariest part wasn't that she changed her name. It was that she started copying my habits, my clothes, my speaking style. She read some old social media posts of mine and started repeating stuff I said like it was her own. One of my coworkers ran into her at a music festival and texted me like, yo, you seemed weird last night. I had no idea what they were talking about until I pieced it together later. She even started DMing people I knew, trying to stay in their lives the way I had. She kept calling one of my friends bestie and tried to get invited to our usual game nights. She posted photos with them like they were super close. And because she looked a little like me, same height, same hair color, same build, people who didn't know me super well started mixing us up in their heads. It was like watching a version of myself I didn't approve of live out a fake life. It hit a new level when she got invited to a cabin weekend. A bunch of us used to go every year, just rent a place, hang out, no phones, nothing serious. I wasn't going that year because of work, but apparently Kara heard about it, DM'd the person organizing it, and straight up said, hey, it's / my name, just wanted to check if there's still space. Since she had my name in mutuals and acted all casual, they didn't question it. They just gave her the invite. I found out when someone tagged me in a group photo that weekend. I looked at the pic and there she was, sitting in the back with a red hoodie that I owned, doing the exact same smile I usually do in photos. It felt like watching a horror movie, but instead of a monster, it was someone pretending to be me and doing it so well that people couldn't even tell. I confronted her once. Not in person. I couldn't even trust that. I texted her. Just straight up asked why she was doing this. She said I was being dramatic and jealous because people liked her better. I didn't even reply. I blocked her number, changed all my usernames, even told my friends to stop tagging me in anything public for a while. It died down a bit after that, or maybe I just stopped noticing. But I still hear her name, my name, come up in weird places. A couple months ago, someone new I was seeing said they heard a funny story about me at a party, and when they told it, I realized it wasn't about me at all. It was about Kara. She's still out there somewhere, living with my name, my memories, and some twisted version of my life. It's not even about missing me. She doesn't miss me. She wants to be me. Or maybe she thinks she is now. I don't know. And I honestly don't want to know. You ever feel like someone just reached inside your head and downloaded your whole identity, and then walked away with it while you stood there like an idiot watching it happen? That's what she did. not in a loud, dramatic way. Quiet. Sneaky. Like a slow leak in a tire that you don't notice until you're swerving down the freeway wondering what the hell went wrong. Anyway, she goes by my name now. Says it like it always belonged to her. And every time someone asks, "Are you the one who?" I have to wonder which one they mean. Alright, here's the next one with a fresh voice and vibe like it came from a that moment when your stomach kind of flips for no reason in the middle of an ordinary day. Like you're walking into work, sipping the coffee that's too hot, minding your business, and suddenly it's like the energy around you just dips. That's how it started with Jay. I didn't see him right away. I felt him. It was this one Monday. I was already cranky because the train was late and I spilled oat milk on my jeans. I walked into the office lobby, the one with those weird scented fake plants and the echo that makes every voice sound like it's being piped through a tin can. I hit the elevator button, and right as it opened, there he was, Jay. Just standing there like this was the most normal thing in the world. We hadn't spoken in months. We'd broken up right after New Year's, and it was messy, like yelling through texts, locking each other on everything kind of messy. He hated that I started doing better after the breakup. I started running more, got promoted, made new friends. I didn't post about it or anything, but he knew. Mutuals. Small city. Word gets around. I moved on. Jay didn't. Anyway, there he was in my elevator, wearing a name badge from my company. I thought it was a prank at first, like maybe he was temping or visiting or something. I was so stunned I didn't even say anything, just stood there gripping my coffee cup like I was about to crush it. He just smiled and said, "Didn't expect to see you here." I asked him about him later, and yep, he'd been hired. Apparently, he started the week before. I guess he got into the IT department, some support role. Different floor, different team, but still. Same building, same break room, same goddamn coffee machine. For a while, he didn't even talk to me. Just existed in the background, popping up randomly near the copy machine, in the stairwell, fake laughing way too loud in the cafeteria. It was like having a ghost around. Everyone else thought he was normal, polite, even. But I knew what he was doing. Kay was smart, calculated. He never came on too strong. He just nudged. Subtle little things that made people raise their eyebrows at me. Like this one time, I had a meeting and my slides didn't load right. I had double-checked everything, but somehow the images glitched and the formatting was all off. I chalked it up to tech issues, but then I overheard Jay in the hallway later saying to someone, "Weird how that keeps happening to her, huh? Maybe she just got too much going on." Then it was the whispers, not full-on gossip, but seeds, planted carefully. Someone would mention that I seemed a little stressed lately or that I reacted weird in a meeting. One guy even asked if I was okay at home because someone said I didn't cry in the bathroom. I hadn't. That wasn't even true, but the rumor was there. The worst part was how calm he acted, like he was just this nice guy trying to do his job. He talked to people I worked with like they were old friends, joke around with my manager, bring donuts once a week like some friendly office bro. And every time I passed him, he'd nod at me like we were cool, like we had some inside joke. I started dreading coming in. Eventually, I tried telling HR that I had a personal issue with him, but they brushed it off. They said as long as he wasn't violating policy, they couldn't really intervene. Apparently, they even asked him if he thought there was tension between us. And of course, he played the part. Said something like, "We dated, but I've moved on. I just want to focus on work." Classic J move. He started dropping more personal stuff. Once during a team lunch, someone said they were having sleep problems, and Jay casually said, "I used to date someone who would stay up all night pacing the room and making lists of all the things she was anxious about. Some people just spiral. Guess who's known for making to-do lists in her notes app?" Another time, he told someone at the coffee station that he admired people who could keep their cool during stress. It's just hard when some folks have episodes. No one said anything out loud, but I saw the looks. People started avoiding eye contact with me when things got tense in meetings. Even when I was just trying to stay focused, they'd act like I was about to flip a table. I started feeling that I had to prove I was normal, like I couldn't vent to anyone or get upset or even seem tired, or they'd think I was breaking down. Meanwhile, Jay got bolder. He once walked by my desk and dropped a sticky note with a smiley face on it. That's it. just a smiley face. But he knew I'd get what it meant. That used to be his way of mocking me when we were fighting. Sending a fake smiley like, everything's fine, when it clearly wasn't. It made me feel nuts, like really, because how do you explain a sticky note making you want to scream? I started leaving the office for lunch, sitting in my car just to get space. I'd avoid the break room, take the stairs instead of the elevator, even changed my start time to earlier just to avoid running into him. But somehow he was always around. Not in a stalker kind of way, but in a this building belongs to me now sort of way. Then came the performance review. My boss mentioned that while I was doing well, there were concerns about my emotional state, and that a few people had mentioned moments of tension. I asked for specifics, but she didn't give any. Said it was just something to be aware of. That's when I realized what Jay had done. He didn't need to fight me or scream or make scenes. He just quietly built a version of me that didn't match who I was. Planted it like a virus in people's heads. So when I reacted even a little, it fit the version of me he created. And I couldn't undo it. Not without sounding exactly like the kind of person they already thought I was. Eventually, I left. I had to. Transferred to another department in a different office. Same company, different city. They framed it like a promotion. Maybe it was. But deep down, I knew I was running. Not from him. It never actually touched me or threatened me. But from the version of me he built, the one everyone started to believe. You ever feel like someone's playing chess and you're just trying to hold your pieces together? Every move was quiet. Every smile, every comment calculated. And he got what he wanted. He made me look unstable without ever raising his voice.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
The weirdest part wasn't that Mia pretended to be pregnant, or that she faked medical documents, or even that she managed to find ultrasound pictures that looked legit enough to fool people who actually worked in healthcare. The weirdest part is that she committed to the lie like it was a full-time job, woke up, punched in, and went to work every day as a fake mother-to-be, all just to ruin my new relationship. I met Mia during the summer where everything was too bright and too fast. She was loud, dramatic, and had this way of turning every minor inconvenience into a story that somehow made her the center of the universe. I should have known, but I didn't. Or maybe I did and just ignored it because she made things exciting for a while. That's how they always start, right? We broke up when things stopped being fun and started being constant arguments about nothing. She'd accuse me of checking out girls at the gas station. Literally. One time I said cool shirt to the cashier, and she didn't speak to me the rest of the night. So yeah, after about 6 months I called it off. No big screaming match or drama. Just told her I wasn't feeling it anymore and I hoped she'd be okay. She said she understood. I read that text again later, and it's wild how calm she seemed. Almost peaceful. Fast forward like 3 months, I started dating someone new. Her name was Erica. She was actually chill. Like, take a nap on a Sunday afternoon kind of chill. She liked doing puzzles, made soup from scratch, and didn't freak out if I took more than 5 minutes to reply to a text. After Mia, it felt like peace. The kind of peace you don't realize you need until you get it. I posted a pic of Erica and me on Instagram. Nothing huge. Just a blurry pic of us at a park. No tags, no captions. Within a day, Mia had DM'd Erica from a private account with a message that said something like, "I just think you should know what kind of guy you're dating." She attached a screenshot of her phone calendar with a due date circled. Then a blurry photo of a pregnancy test. Then a black and white ultrasound photo. Now here's the thing. Erica believed her. Not immediately, but enough to pause. She didn't even confront me at first. She just got quiet, less affectionate. Shorter replies. I thought I'd done something wrong, like maybe I said something off or wasn't being attentive enough. But then one night she sat me down and said, "Did you get your ex pregnant?" I almost laughed. Thought she was joking. Then she showed me the messages, and that's when my stomach dropped. Because the ultrasound photo wasn't just some random image from Google. It had my name on it. My full legal name. As if I'd been at the appointment. I told Erica it wasn't true. That Mia was lying. That I hadn't seen or spoken to her in months. But once the seed was planted, it didn't really matter what I said. Erica wasn't a paranoid person, but she was smart. Logical. and logic told her that if Mia went through this much trouble, there had to be some truth in there. Mia started ramping it up. Erica got another DM, this time with a video. Mia holding her stomach, talking softly about how hard it's been doing this alone. She even had that fake pregnancy pillow thing on under her hoodie. Said she was 7 weeks alone. Then she started tagging Erica's friends in cryptic posts. Stuff like "you think you know someone," with those annoying ellipses and black and white filters. I called Mia. First time in months, she didn't answer. Sent me to voicemail. Then I got a text 2 hours later that said, "Don't you think your baby deserves better?" That's when I knew she wasn't just messing around. She believed her own lie, or wanted to. I went to my friend Nate, who works admin at a clinic. He looked at the ultrasound pic and said it was fake, like not even a real scan, just a template someone photoshopped. He told me he'd seen a few fake ones before when people were trying to get out of work or scare their boyfriends. But this one was more detailed than usual. I tried showing all this to Erica, showed her proof Mia and I hadn't talked, the timestamp inconsistencies in Mia's messages. Even the name of the imaging clinic Mia used on the pic didn't match any local places. But the damage was already there. Erica said she didn't know what to believe anymore. She said she needed space. Mia posted a photo of baby Onzi 2 days later. Tagless, faceless, but with a caption that said, "For when he finally comes home." Erica ghosted me after that, straight up. Blocked me on everything. No goodbye. Nothing. I snapped. Drove to Mia's place. She'd moved since we dated, but I found it through one of her tagged photos. Knocked on her door, and she opened it with this blank look like she'd been waiting for me. She didn't say anything, just stared. I asked her what she was doing, why she was ruining my life, what she wanted. She said I owed her, that I broke her, that I should have stayed. Then she stepped back and pulled out another ultrasound photo. Different pose, same fake name, and she whispered, "You'll always be the father of the life we almost had." I left. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just left. I don't know what happened to her after that. I blocked her, deleted everything tied to her, even changed my number. I still think about Erica, though. She probably thinks I actually did something wrong. That's the part that stings the most. Not the lie itself, not even the breakup. It's that Mia managed to paint me as the villain in someone else's story, and no matter how hard I tried to prove otherwise, the lie stuck harder than the truth ever could. I wasn't even the one who found out first. It was my mom. She called me while I was in line at this sketchy gas station near my apartment, and right off the bat I could tell something was off. She sounded weird. Not mad exactly, more like disappointed, but trying to mask it under casual small talk. She asked how work was going, if I'd been seeing anyone, if I'd been making good choices. That last one tripped me out. She hadn't said that to me since I was 17 and got caught drinking in a parking lot. She paused for a while, then said, "We got a letter." I thought she meant like a bill, or maybe one of those scam offers old people get in the mail for fake sweepstakes. But then she said, "It's about you." That's when I felt the first crack. She didn't want to read it out loud, so she just paraphrased. The letter claimed I'd been involved in some concerning activities, that I was misleading the people closest to me and engaging in behavior that could be harmful to myself and others. The person didn't sign it. It was typed like from an old typewriter or a font that looked like one. They referred to themselves as a concerned neighbor. The thing is, I didn't even live near my parents. They're 2 towns over in the suburban cul-de-sac where neighbors water each other's plants and still borrow sugar. Nobody from there would know enough about my life to write something like that. That was my first red flag. The second red flag came a week later. Another letter showed up. Same style. This one was more detailed. It said I was leading a double life, that I was pretending to be a respectable son when in reality I was involved in all these shady things. Clubbing, cheating, lying, disrespecting my upbringing. That was Kane. No doubt in my mind. He used to say stuff like that when we fought. He always threw around words like upbringing and integrity like he was somebody's dad. And not just a guy who once threw a blender at the wall because I didn't text him back fast enough. We'd broken up 5 months before that second letter showed up. Not long enough for him to forget how to screw with me. Kane was always more obsessed with what things looked like than what they actually were. Our whole relationship was just a highlight reel. He'd show up to my family's house all dressed up, smiling, holding wine bottles he couldn't afford, charming everyone. They thought he was great. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, he was tracking my location, going through my phone, and accusing me of cheating if I looked at someone too long in public. When we ended things, I expected some blowback. A few nasty texts, maybe. Some passive-aggressive posts. But not this. I tried telling my parents it was fake, that someone was messing with them. But the letters kept coming, and each time they got more specific. Stuff only someone close to me could have known. They mentioned the time I called in sick to work and actually just stayed home because I was burned out. They brought up an old college story about me passing out at a party. He even mentioned a girl I used to flirt with at my old job. Nothing ever happened, but Kane knew about it because he read through my DMs once like a psycho. My parents started pulling away. It wasn't instant, but I felt it. Less calls. More awkward pauses when we talked. My mom started bringing up church again. My dad asked if I needed professional help. It didn't outright accuse me of anything, but you could tell they weren't sure anymore. Like the letters created just enough doubt to make them question everything. That was the worst part. Not that he embarrassed me or tried to ruin my life, but that he made my own family look at me like I was a stranger. I asked them to show me the letters. They were hesitant at first, but eventually they let me come over and read through them. They were laid out in this neat stack on the dining room table like some dark scrapbook. Each one was a little more detailed than the last. There were even printouts. Screenshots from my socials, pics of me at bars, one blurry photo of me at a diner with some friends that must have been taken from across the street. I asked if they'd noticed anyone strange around the house lately. My mom said she did think she saw someone sitting in a parked car near the mailbox a few weeks earlier, but didn't think much of it. Classic Kane, he didn't want to ruin me publicly. He wanted to make the people closest to me question who I really was. I confronted him. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe an apology, maybe for him to laugh in my face. But he didn't deny it, didn't even try. He just looked at me and said, well, they deserve to know the truth, don't they? The truth? What truth? That we broke up because he was controlling and couldn't handle it when I made friends without him. That he got mad when I locked my phone because he thought I was hiding something. That I stopped loving him when he started treating my life like a project. He thought he was some kind of whistleblower, like he was doing the world a favor by airing out my truth. I told my parents everything, from the start. The fights, the tracking apps. The time he showed up at my work pretending to drop off lunch just to check if I was alone. I told them how he used to love playing victim when we argued and how he'd twist things to make me feel like I was a crazy one. They listened. I don't know if they believed all of it, but I think they understood more after that. Things got a little better. Not perfect. Not like before, but better. The letter stopped after that. I don't know if he finally got bored or if he realized his plan wasn't working anymore. Either way, they just stopped. No more mysterious envelopes. No more accusations. I still think about it sometimes. How easy it was for one person to create a whole alternate version of me, piece by piece, with a printer and some spite. How fragile trust can be, even with people who raised you. Kane didn't try to ruin my life. He tried to rewrite it. And for a while, he actually pulled it off. Okay, so let me paint the picture for you. I'm walking into my parents' house on Thanksgiving, just holding a tray of mac and cheese like an idiot, wearing this goofy sweater I bought last minute because my mom likes it when we dress festive. I hadn't been home in a couple months, and honestly, I was kind of hyped to chill, eat, maybe a nap on the couch after dessert. That was the whole plan. Simple, no drama. And then I see her, sitting on the couch, laughing, next to my little brother, my ex. Misty. Like, full body, soul leaving the chat type of shock. I didn't even say anything for a second. I just stood there frozen, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. She was leaning into my brother like they were comfortable, like they'd been doing that kind of leaning for a while. And he was looking at her the same way he used to look at his old high school girlfriend. Head over heels, goofy grin and all that. I turned around and went back outside to put the tray in the car like I forgot something. I just needed a second. Maybe 10. Maybe a full year. Let me back up for a second, though. Misty and I dated for a year and some change. Nothing crazy long, but long enough that she knew real stuff about me. Stuff I didn't even tell my family. Stuff from way back. College mistakes, things I dealt with growing up, even the dumb things I felt insecure about. We broke up mostly because we weren't aligned. She wanted me to propose. I was just trying to hold down a job and get a handle on life. She took it personally, like I didn't value her or whatever, and dipped. We hadn't talked since. And now here she was in my house, holding a wine glass like she belonged there. I walked back in with my tray, pretending like I hadn't just aged 20 years in the driveway. Everyone was acting normal. My mom hugged me, Dad gave me that half pat on the back thing he does, and my brother, Ely, walked up with that goofy smile and said, "Hey man, long time." I nodded and asked how he'd been. Didn't even bring up Misty. I figured maybe she was just tagging along, I hoped. But the way he looked at her when she walked over to stand beside him made my stomach twist. He put his arm around her waist. That's when I knew. Dinner was actual hell. Misty kept making little comments that no one else would pick up on, but I did. Stuff like some people just run from responsibility when we were talking about work. Or you'd be surprised what people hide behind a smile when the topic of mental health came up. She was testing me, seeing how far she could go without actually saying anything direct. Ely kept laughing at her jokes like she was the funniest person alive. I just sat there stabbing sweet potatoes and trying not to explode. Then my dad started asking me when I'd settle down, and Misty, loud enough for everyone to hear, said, "Maybe he's just not built for long-term commitment." My fork hit the plate so hard it clinked like a warning bell. After dinner, I cornered Eli in the garage while he was grabbing beers. I asked him straight up how long he and Misty had been a thing. He said they'd started talking a couple months ago. Said it just happened. They connected. I asked him if he realized she was my ex, and he shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. Said she told him everything. How I treated her like a placeholder, how I'd played mind games, how I'd never really opened up. I told him that wasn't true, that she was twisting stuff. He just looked at me and said, "Well, she told me a lot of things, bro." And that's when I realized what was happening. Misty didn't just show up here by accident. She planned this. She wanted to stay close to my family. She wanted access, and she used Ely to get it. Next couple of weeks, I couldn't even go home without it being weird. I'd pull up and Misty would be there, barefoot in the kitchen like she lived there, chatting with my mom like they were best friends. One time I came over for my dad's birthday, and she brought up something I told her in confidence during our relationship, of how I used to get panic attacks in college. She said it like a casual fact in front of my whole family. Ely just stood there like it was normal. Then came the Facebook comments. Misty would comment under my family's posts like she was one of us. "Love you guys," under my mom's photo. "So proud of you, Eli," on my brother's new job announcement. She was fully inserting herself into every corner of my life. I tried talking to my mom about it. She said she liked Misty. Said she was mature, grounded, just what Eli needs. I told her she didn't know the half of it. My mom just gave me that look, like I was being petty, like I was the one who couldn't move on. It got worse when Misty started dropping info I'd never told anyone but her. At a family barbecue, she brought up my old therapy sessions. Joked about how I used to write journal entries like I was writing a novel. Everyone laughed. I felt like my whole chest locked up. I didn't say anything then. I just walked away. Last straw was when she texted me. Just straight up texted me one night after dinner at my parents'. She said, "You always underestimated me." That's when I blocked her. Blocked Eli too. I couldn't keep playing nice while she gutted my privacy like it was her personal playground. I told my family I wouldn't be coming around as much. They didn't really get it. They thought I was overreacting, thought it was jealousy. But it wasn't jealousy, it was betrayal. Not just by Misty, but by Eli too. You don't date your brother's ex, and you definitely don't let her weaponize your brother's secrets to feel powerful. Now I see them in photos sometimes, happy or pretending to be. I don't know. I don't care. But I'll never forget how it felt, watching someone walk into my family and take a seat at the table like I was the one who didn't belong. All right, so this one doesn't start with a breakup or some dramatic argument or anyone crying in the rain. It started with a knock on my door. Just a plain, boring Wednesday, nothing special. And I'm home watching reruns in pajama pants, eating cereal out of a mug, when someone starts banging on the front door like they're about to kick it in. I opened it thinking it was a delivery gone wrong or maybe the maintenance guy, but nope. It was a dude in khakis holding a clipboard, looking mad and out of breath. He asked if I was planning to move in next week, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" He flips the clipboard around and shows me a lease agreement with my full name on it, my email, and what looked like my signature. Only thing is, I never signed that. That's how I found out Drake had forged my signature on a lease for a place I'd never even seen. Let me explain a bit. Drake and I had dated for a while, and we tried living together once. It was a disaster. Dude never cleaned anything, left empty bottles everywhere, spent all his money on takeout, and then acted broke like it was some mysterious force draining his bank account. He always had big plans and zero follow-through. He talked a lot about starting fresh and getting his life on track, but I was a one paying bills and scrubbing his toothpaste off the sink. When we split, it was civil. At least I thought so. We divided stuff, blocked each other, moved on. Or again, I thought we did. A couple weeks after we broke up, he texted asking if I'd co-sign for an apartment with him. Said he'd been denied a few places already. I told him no. That wasn't personal. I just didn't want to be financially tied to someone I wasn't dating anymore. Plus, I knew how he was with money. No chance I was going to get stuck paying someone else's rent again. He said he understood. Didn't argue. I read the text again later just to make sure. No worries, I get it. That's what he wrote. Apparently, no worries translated to go ahead and fake your signature on a legal document. The guy at my door, he was the landlord, was fuming. He said Drake had already paid the deposit and first month's rent. I was supposedly listed as the co-tenant. He even showed me a fake email chain where I had asked questions about the apartment and said I was excited to move in. It was creepy as hell seeing my name and the way he wrote like me. He copied my tone the way I usually write emails, casual but polite, like he'd studied it. I told the landlord it wasn't me, that I didn't sign anything, didn't even know about the place. At first, the guy didn't believe me. He kept pressing like maybe I forgot or was backing out last minute. So I asked if I could see the full application. That's what got even more messed up. Because along with the forged signature, there was a copy of my ID, like a real photo of it. That means Drake had taken a photo of my driver's license at some point while we were together and kept it. Probably in his phone or computer or whatever. That part made my skin crawl. He had to go out of his way to plan this. Print the lease, sign it, attach fake emails, upload a copy of my ID, pay actual money to lock it in. When I called him, he didn't answer. Typical, so I left a voicemail and a text. "What the hell is this lease thing? Call me now." Nothing. The next day I tried calling again. Still no answer. But then I got a message from the landlord saying, "Drake informed us you're going through some issues and it's best not to contact you directly. We'll remove you from the lease once it's sorted legally." I was floored. He told them I was mentally unwell, that I shouldn't be talked to. That was his whole defense. Not even denying the forgery, just trying to discredit me before I could speak. I spent the next few days scrambling. Had to email the property manager, send proof that I never applied, submit a signed affidavit saying the signature was fake. I even went down to the office in person, printed out my call log, old messages, screenshots, everything to show them I hadn't agreed to anything. They finally took me off the lease, but it wasn't easy, and I had to threaten legal action to even get them to listen. The whole time, Drake was just silent. Didn't apologize, didn't explain, didn't even argue. I started going through old stuff after that. Looked through my emails, social accounts, cloud storage, just to see what else he might have saved or taken screenshots of. That's when I realized how many times I'd sent him personal stuff without thinking. Bank screenshots, pay stubs, a pic of my ID once when we were setting up utilities. It all felt harmless then, just regular couple stuff. But he turned it into a weapon. I talked to a lawyer friend just to see if I could press charges or do something. They said I could technically, but the hassle of proving everything, dealing with court, plus the fact that no money was lost on my end would make it a long and exhausting process. I didn't go through with it. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was so burned out from dealing with the mess he made that I didn't have anything left in the tank. I just wanted to move on. It messed with my head for a while, though. Made me paranoid. I changed all of my passwords, put a fraud alert on my credit, stopped sending anyone anything without triple checking it. Even now, when someone asks me to co-sign or fill out anything official, I hesitate. It's weird, you date someone, trust them, share stuff, live together. Then they forge your name, steal your info, and lie to strangers about your mental state just to make themselves look better. I guess Drake never really cared about what happened to me after we broke up. He just wanted what he wanted, and when I told him no, he went around me. Used my name like it was just another tool in his toolbox. If I hadn't caught him when I did, I might have ended up in court, or stuck with rent payments for a place I didn't even live in. And Drake, he probably would have said I agreed and just forgot. I first noticed something was off when I walked into the rec center's side room and saw her sitting in the circle. That was my Monday night group, the one I've been going to for over a year. It wasn't anything dramatic or serious, just a community support thing for folks dealing with anxiety and managing stress in everyday life. It was never meant to be drama central. And then boom, Tina. We hadn't seen each other in maybe 2 months at that point, after a rough ending that included a lot of silent treatments and me packing my stuff in my car at 2 in the morning while she watched from the porch with a glass of wine. So seeing her there, sitting cross-legged in leggings and this huge hoodie, like she was just another anxious millennial trying to keep it together, really threw me. I didn't even think she knew where I went on Monday nights. I sat down across from her and gave a little nod, trying to play it cool. The group leader started the session like usual. It was chill at first. People shared stuff about work burnout and family issues. But when it was Tina's turn to talk, that's when I realized what she was really doing there. She didn't say my name. That's the part that made it feel worse. She didn't have to. She started talking about how she was finally in a place where she could process what it was like to date someone who constantly gaslit her, someone who made her feel small. Her exact words were a manipulative narcissist, and I swear my ears started ringing. I just stared at the floor the whole time, trying not to let my face give anything away. No one in the group had ever met her before. To them, she was just a new-faced, a broken girl trying to rebuild herself. To me, she was doing this weird public passive hit job. After the session ended, I figured that would be it. Like, maybe she just showed up to get some weird closure or wanted to spy on me, or whatever. But nope, she started coming every week. And every week, her stories got darker. She was smart about it too. She would drop just enough specific stuff to paint me as the guy she was talking about without actually saying it. I could see the group slowly start to shift around me. One guy, Rob, who I used to grab coffee with after sessions, started ducking out early. A girl I used to text during the week about how we were managing our panic cycle suddenly coasted. The worst part was the silence. No one ever confronted me about it. No one asked questions. It just listened to her and gave me these quiet glances that said all they needed to. Outside the group, things got weirder. I started getting DMs on Instagram from random accounts that just said things like narc and karma's coming. One message just said, you know what you did. It didn't take long to trace the accounts back to her friends or people in her circle. She had clearly told everyone about me in some twisted way, and now was some villain in her healing journey. Then one week she brought muffins, like actual baked muffins. Banana nut. Set them right in the middle of the group, all wrapped in this cute tin. People thanked her and called her thoughtful. And I just sat there like an idiot while she smiled at me across the circle. That was the moment I knew she wasn't going anywhere. She started playing the long game. She talked about how she was finally learning to recognize red flags, about how she'd spent too long ignoring her gut instincts. Sometimes she'd get emotional, just on the edge of crying. I started getting paranoid that people in the group were taking notes, like this was some sort of trial, and I didn't even know I was on trial. I stopped sharing. I'd go to the sessions and just sit there with my hands in my pockets, waiting for it to end. Then came the worst one. She brought a printed journal entry. I don't know how the group leader let it happen, but she read from it out loud. And it was all about the moment I realized he never loved me. She described a night we had gone to a bar downtown and I had forgotten to compliment her outfit. Like, that specific. She didn't name the place, but it was obvious. I could see a few people glance over at me while she read. She was crying by the end of it, and everyone clapped. I kid you not, they clapped. That night, I left early and sat in my car for like 20 minutes before starting the engine. It wasn't even about being embarrassed. It was that feeling like someone had crawled inside your brain and was rewriting your whole life story without your permission. I tried to talk to the group leader about it, but she said the space was open to anyone, and as long as Tina wasn't naming names or violating the rules, she couldn't intervene. I asked if maybe we could split the group times or something. She said that would go against the mission of inclusivity. I wanted to scream. So I stopped going. I ghosted the group, just stopped showing up. I don't even know if anyone noticed. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. But a couple of weeks later, I saw a flyer taped to a light pole by the bus stop near my apartment. It was for a new support group, same concept, different neighborhood. But right at the bottom, it said, led by survivor advocate, Tina Dowie. That was when it clicked. This wasn't about healing. It was never about working through stuff. This was her new hobby, or worse, her new identity. I guess being the girl who escaped the narcissist was better than being the girl who just got dumped in silence. Anyway, I haven't been back to any support group since. I do my therapy sessions online now and keep my social stuff low-key. But every once in a while, I wonder what story she's telling now. I wonder how many people have heard her version and believe it. I wonder how many guys she's described in those circles. Maybe I was just the first. You ever be halfway through a jog, minding your business, earbuds in, pushing through a side stitch, and then suddenly some doobie used to date is standing by the water fountain, shirt off like it's a Calvin Klein ad, just waiting? That was my life for like a weird 2-month stretch, all thanks to Ben. And the messed up part, I didn't even realize what was happening until way too late. When we broke up, it wasn't explosive. There were no screaming matches or throwing things. It was more of that cold silence and mutual frustration kind of ending. He accused me of being distant. I told him I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. That was it. We exchanged a couple of awkward texts about getting our stuff back, and then we went our separate ways. I blocked him on socials mostly just to give myself a clean break, but I didn't think much of it. Thought we'd both move on like adults. Turns out, not even close. So I run, not competitively or anything, just something to keep my head clear. I've been doing this 5 loop near the lake every other day, same route, same time for months. It was my routine, and one day I saw him. He didn't say anything the first time, just jogged past me going the other direction. Shirtless, smirking, like we were in some weird night commercial. I thought it was just a coincidence. He used to run too, back when we were together. So I figured, all right, whatever. Same neighborhood, people cross paths. I ignored it. But then it kept happening. Every time I ran, he was there, always showing up somewhere along the road, and it wasn't subtle. Sometimes he'd pop up behind me and speed past like he was trying to race. Other times, he'd be leaning against a bench like he was cooling down but never looked winded. One time, he was just standing there pretending to stretch, and when I passed him, he clapped. Literally clapped. I thought I was losing my mind. Then came the really weird part. I had a running app, just a basic one that tracks your distance and pace and stuff. I never posted anything from it, but one day I opened it and noticed that my settings had been changed. It was connected to my old email, one we used to share for this grocery list app when we were dating. And that email? I'd never changed the password. My stomach dropped. I checked the app's connection history and saw multiple logins from different devices, one of which matched his old phone model. I was being tracked. He hacked into the fitness app and had access to all my scheduled runs, locations, even times I planned to go. That's how he always knew where to be. It wasn't a coincidence. He wasn't just running for fun. He was tracking me like I was a target. I confronted him. Not in person, I wasn't about to get into it face to face. I sent him this long message from a burner account I made just for that one time. I didn't yell or curse, just laid it all out. Told him I knew what he was doing and to knock it off. Told him if I saw him again near my running spots, I'd report him. He read it, and no surprise, never replied. But the next time I went for a run, he wasn't there. I thought it was over. I thought I'd finally gotten through. I changed my route, updated my app password, made everything private. For a minute, things felt normal again. But then I started getting texts from random numbers. Stuff like, "You look strong today," or "Nice pace this morning." Creepy, vague messages that could come from anyone, except they came minutes after I'd finished my runs. I tried not to panic, but I felt sick. It wasn't just the app anymore. He was watching. A few days later, I was jogging on a new path near the dog park, completely different area, way outside my normal loop, and there he was. Sitting on the back of a bench, shirtless again, headphones in, not even pretending to be subtle anymore. Just staring. I didn't stop. I ran right past him, kept going until I got to the bus stop, and took a ride home. After that, I didn't go running again for weeks. I tried to explain it to a couple friends, but it sounded so insane out loud. Like, who hacks into someone's fitness app to stalk them? who memorizes someone's jogging route and plants themselves along it just to be seen. I kept getting the same responses. File a report. Change your number. Get pepper spray. Like, yeah, all valid advice, but none of it made me feel any less grossed out or angry. Mostly angry. I ended up deleting the app completely. Got a new one, made a new email, changed every password I could remember. And I started running at random times in different places, always looking over my shoulder. I wish I could say that stopped him entirely, but every now and then, he still found a way to show off. Once at a local race I hadn't even promoted, just standing near the finish line, arms crossed. Another time in the background of a friend's Instagram story from a park event. Just there, never close enough to do anything, but always close enough to be noticed. Eventually I moved. Not just because of him, but that definitely sped things up. Found a new place on the other side of town and didn't tell anyone where I was going except for family. Changed gyms, switched apps again. New phone number. Even got a different route to and from work. It was exhausting, but worth it. Last I heard, Ben got really into some conspiracy podcast and started making videos about fitness and discipline and mental toughness. One of those self-proclaimed alpha types. I don't follow him, but people send me stuff sometimes just to keep me in the loop. Apparently, he does this running challenge thing now where he runs the same loop every morning and films himself talking to the camera. I wouldn't be surprised if he's still keeping tabs on where I go. He always liked to be 10 steps ahead, even when no one was chasing him. I was on a date when I found out. Not even halfway through my burger, and the girl sitting across from me, who had met on an app a few days earlier, goes, "So, is it true you made your ex quit her job by gaslighting her for a year?" I thought she was joking. I laughed and said something like, "That's a weird opener." But she wasn't joking. Her whole vibe changed instantly. She was looking at me like I had kicked her dog. She leaned back in her seat and told me she almost didn't show up, but she just had to see if I really matched the stories online. That was the moment I knew something was off. I asked her what she meant, and she just pulled out her phone and started scrolling. She found it fast. This profile, a dating app I didn't use, under a different name, but with my face, my exact pictures. The same ones from my socials and even a few I thought were private, like a selfie I only ever sent Lauren when we were dating. And then I saw the bio. It was like some twisted autobiography. It said I was a recovered narcissist learning to manipulate less, joked about my habit of love bombing and ghosting, and went on about how I was looking for someone emotionally broken enough to keep up with my games. It was so specific, so weirdly written that I knew instantly who made it. It even mentioned that I cried after every fight and blamed it on childhood trauma, which was something I told Lauren once. Once. The rest of the night was a blur. I tried to explain that it wasn't me, but it was already over. She paid for her half of the meal and left before I could even finish my drink. I sat there staring at that profile on her phone, wondering how many people had read it and believed it. How many people matched with it just to argue? How many just swiped away and carried that image of me in their head? I hadn't talked to Lauren in months. Things ended messy, not violent or anything, just exhausting. She was one of those people who could never let things sit. Every disagreement turned into an interrogation. Every win had to be hers. By the end, we were arguing more than talking. I ended it on a Wednesday night after she accused me of emotionally editing her memories, whatever that even means. We didn't talk after that. No texts, no follow-ups. I blocked her and moved on. At least I thought I moved on. The fake profile was just the beginning. Later that week, I started getting weird DMs from strangers, all women. Some of them accusing me of stuff I didn't even understand. One girl said, "You're exactly the kind of guy my therapist warned me about." Another said, "It's sick that you brag about making girls cry." I didn't know any of them. I barely dated anyone after Lauren, but the comments were always strangely personal, like they knew things about me. I asked one of them where they got their info, and she said she'd seen a post in a private subreddit about narcissistic dating horror stories, and that someone had written a thread about me. I found the thread. It didn't use my name, but it might as well have. Everything in it was so detailed it didn't need to. The city I live in, my job, my old apartment's layout, stuff I'd said, things I'd worn, even the tattoo on my collarbone that I always covered with a shirt. The person who posted it, using a throwaway account, claimed to be recovering from an emotionally abusive relationship with someone who manipulated their way through sympathy and used every breakup as a personal brand expansion. It described this imaginary version of me who was apparently a serial gaslighter with boy next door energy, masking deep-seated control issues. I sat there staring at the screen like it was a script someone had written based on a fevered dream of our relationship. It wasn't just exaggerated, it was fiction wrapped around a few real facts to make it sound legit. And the worst part was the comments. Hundreds of people commenting and validating it, sharing their own stories and calling me trash. A couple of them claimed to have matched with a fake profile too, saying it lined up with what they read in the thread. Someone even said they warned a friend who recognized me on another app. I couldn't prove it was Lauren, but I knew. She always had this obsession of control, not in a loud way, more like if she couldn't win the relationship, she'd win the story afterward. And that's what this was. She was rewriting our whole relationship in public, turning me into a villain people could hate from behind screens. And the scary thing, it worked. I tried reporting the fake profile on the dating app. It got taken down for like 3 days. Then it popped up again under a slightly different name, but the same photos. Same weird bio, I reported it again. Same cycle. I even reached out to the app support team and explained what was going on. They were useless. Just sent a generic response about community guidelines and asked if I could prove my identity. I sent in a selfie holding my ID. It didn't even reply. Eventually, it spread. She didn't just stop at one app. She made fake profiles on other platforms too. Ones where you could leave anonymous comments or create anonymous blog-style posts. I found one site where someone had written a whole fake diary about dating me. It read like a mix between a breakup memoir and a psychological thriller, full of twisted retellings of fights we had, except with me saying things I never said and doing things I'd never do. Stuff like he watched me cry and told me my pain turned him on. Like, what? Who writes that and thinks it's helpful? I started getting paranoid. I stopped using dating apps altogether. Every time I met someone new, I felt like I had to pre-defend myself, like I was giving some weird disclaimer about rumors they might have seen. I scrubbed my socials, locked everything down. I even started going by my middle name on some accounts just to put some distance between me and whatever version of me she was broadcasting. One of my friends, who was also friends with Lauren for a while, tried to talk to her about it. Said she denied everything and played dumb, like she had no idea what anyone was talking about. Claimed she hadn't thought about me in months and had moved on with peace. Meanwhile, another version of me was apparently thriving online as some manipulative boogeyman people used in cautionary tales. There's not really a happy ending here. I never got her to admit to it, never got an apology. I just faded from the internet slowly. Took my name off anything public. Made my world smaller. It sucked, but it worked. Eventually, the fake profiles stopped, or at least I stopped hearing about them. I guess she moved on to whatever came next. All I know is somewhere out there, there's still people who think I'm some monster because of a story they read online. It started with a tag. I was scrolling through my notifications while half watching some trash reality show on my laptop, not really expecting anything interesting. My feed was mostly old classmates posting vacation pics and people trying to sell candles. And then I saw it, a notification that said I'd been tagged in a post by someone I hadn't thought about in forever. Thanos. Yeah, that was his actual name. Well, nickname technically, but everyone called him that because he had a thing for Marvel and a weird obsession with power. Honestly, it should have been a red flag from the start. Anyway, I clicked on the tag, and boom, there it was. A full-blown, high-def photo of his shoulder, freshly inked, swollen, and red. And in the middle of it all, my face, my actual face, tattooed, permanently. Above it, the words "Real love never dies" in this dramatic cursive font. The worst part, he tagged not just me, but also my mom, my brother, and even my aunt who barely uses Facebook, and still writes in all caps, like he wanted everyone in my family to see it, like it was some kind of declaration. I almost dropped my phone. At first I thought it was some kind of filter or prank, but no, it was real. You could see the redness around the edges. The skin was still healing. My face was now inked into this dude's body for life, and not even in a stylized way. It looked like one of those hyper-realistic portraits you get from a guy named Rick in a strip mall. Every detail of my face was there. the same photo I'd once used as my profile pic, probably ripped right off Instagram. The caption was even worse than the tattoo. He wrote this long paragraph about how he had never loved anyone the way he loved me, how people don't understand what loyalty really means, and how some people leave but the real ones remember. It was unhinged. He ended it with a line like, "This is for the world to see, forever," and then a flame emoji because of course. I hadn't spoken to Thanos in almost a year. We dated for 6 months, and it was rocky the whole time. He was intense, not in a passionate way, more like an energy vampire. He gets super dramatic over small things, accused me of checking out emotionally if I didn't respond to texts fast enough, stuff like that. Once he tried to make me delete a photo of my dog because he said it got more likes than pics of us together. The dude was unstable, but I didn't fully see it until after we split. The breakup was rough. Not like yelling and crying rough, more like exhausting and drawn out. I kept trying to end it clean, but he'd show up at my apartment uninvited with these sad eyes and a handwritten letter every time. He left notes on my car. He mailed me a box of rocks once with a note that said, "You made me feel like this." I never even tried to understand that one. I just blocked him on everything and told my building to stop letting him in. Eventually, it stopped. Or so I thought. After I saw the tattoo post, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to respond, didn't want to give him the satisfaction, but it felt like a threat in disguise, like, "Hey, I permanently marked myself with your face and shared it with your whole family. Don't forget me." I texted my brother and asked if he'd seen it. He had. So had my mom. My aunt called me that night and asked if I'd gotten back together with that nice boy who used to bring flowers. I had to explain that no, I hadn't, and also he was definitely not nice. Then it started getting creepier. He made the tattoo his profile picture. Every few days, he posts updates about it, like, "Healing nicely. Her smile still looks perfect." It felt like a weird shrine. And people I didn't even know, were commenting stuff like, "That's real love, and this generation needs more men like you." Meanwhile, I was sitting in my room trying not to scream into a pillow. I ended up blocking him again and reported the post, but it was too late. The internet doesn't unsee things. I got tagged in reaction memes from random accounts. People joking that it must have been magical to get a dude to tattoo my face. One of my coworkers even pulled me aside and asked if I was okay, because his girlfriend had shown him the post and they figured it was probably weird for me. Yeah, just a little. I heard through a friend that Thanos was telling people we were spiritually married, that even though we weren't physically in the same space, we were connected in a way most couples would never understand. He'd post throwback photos of us and write captions like, "Some people break up. We just grew deeper," like he was trying to manifest me back into his life through sheer delusion. One time I bumped into him at a gas station. I tried to dip out before he saw me, but he caught me while I was paying. Walked right up like we were old friends and just nodded toward his shoulder and said, "Still bet you with me." I didn't respond. I just left. That night I had to fight off this overwhelming urge to call him and scream, but I didn't. I didn't want to give him that moment. The last I heard, he started going to this artist workshop thing where he talks about transcending heartbreak through permanent art, which I guessed means he's showing people my face on his shoulder like a museum exhibit. A friend sent me a screenshot of one of his posts. He'd uploaded a video of himself talking to a group about the one that got away, and how he used the tattoo to preserve that energy forever. The comments were full of people praising his vulnerability and asking where they could get inked with their exes' faces too. That's the story. I'm tattooed onto a man's body against my will, probably forever. My face is now part of some guy's emotional scrapbook he walks around with every day. And I didn't even know until he tagged my mom. I work in a pretty chill office, or at least I used to think so. Marketing agency, open floor plan, kombucha in the fridge, people bringing their dogs in on Fridays. You get the vibe. No one wore suits. Most meetings were just people standing around holding iced coffee and saying buzzwords. We had this whole culture of pretending we were all one big family, which usually meant awkward happy hours and Slack messages that started with "hey, hey," instead of just getting to the point. Anyway, about 2 months after Jessica and I broke up, HR sent out an email about this new mental health initiative the company was launching. Something about wellness, open communication, safe spaces, whatever. At the bottom, it mentioned they were bringing in a guest speaker to kick off a new monthly seminar series called Mind Matters. I didn't really care. I usually zoned out during those kinds of things, until I saw the name. Jessica Mendez, guest speaker, licensed therapist. I read it 3 times, just to be sure. Same spelling, same last name, same first name, and yeah, definitely my ex. I stared at the screen like it was some kind of prank, but it wasn't. She was really coming to my office, and somehow no one had any idea we ever dated. We'd met through mutual friends about a year before. It started fast and messy. She was intense in that kind of cool, confident way. Wore oversized sweaters and always had some book on trauma she was halfway through. She wasn't actually a therapist, though. Not licensed. Not even close. She worked at a crisis hotline for a bit and took some online psych courses, but mostly she just liked sounding like the smartest person in the room. And to be fair, sometimes she was. But the more time we spent together, the more everything became a deep, emotional monologue about how damaged she was and how I wasn't doing the work to connect with her. She once gave me a whole TED talk about how my way of folding laundry was a metaphor for emotional avoidance. That kind of thing. We lasted maybe 6 months. Our breakup was long and drawn out. One of those where you say you're done, but still see each other for another month, just arguing and sleeping over and pretending you're figuring it out. Eventually, I just stopped responding. Blocked her. Not out of hate, just survival. And now she was about to be the speaker at a company seminar. I thought about saying something to HR, but how do you even word that? Hey, your mental health guest used to date me and I think she might use the whole thing to mess with me. No chance. So I just decided to sit in the back of the room and pretend I was invisible. The day she showed up, everything was too quiet. She walked in wearing this flowy blazer thing and glasses she didn't used to wear. Her whole vibe was like therapist in an indie movie. She smiled at everyone like she owned the place. A couple of my coworkers were already talking about how cool she seemed. She has that calm energy, one of them said. I wanted to crawl under my desk. When the seminar started, she walked up to the front, clicked her little PowerPoint remote, and said, "Today, I want to talk about emotional erosion." That was when I knew I was screwed. She didn't mention me by name, obviously, but the entire presentation was this vague, curated story about a toxic relationship she'd recently gotten out of, how she lost herself, how she learned to rebuild, how trauma can disguise itself as kindness. Every example she gave lined up perfectly with things I had done or said, like she was reading my old texts out loud, but using general terms. At one point, she said, sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who never raise their voice. That one stung. People around me were nodding super into it. A few even looked emotional. And I just sat there with my arms crossed, trying to look like I was engaged while fighting off a full-body cringe. It got worse. She had these slides with questions like, have you ever felt like you were being blamed for someone else's sadness? Or do they apologize only when you cry? And everyone was like, wow, this is deep, while I was in the back thinking, is this my breakup or a keynote? At the end, she took questions. Someone asked her how long ago the relationship happened. She smiled and said, not long enough. I almost stood up and walked out, but I didn't want to draw attention. I just sat there and waited for it to be over. When she finished, people clapped, and a full-on round of applause. My boss came over afterward and said, that was amazing, right? We're thinking of bringing her back next quarter. I nodded and said something about needing to hop on a call. I went to the bathroom and just stood there for a minute staring at the sink. It felt like she had walked into my world, taken all our worst moments, and turned them into a job opportunity. Later that week, she posted a photo on her Instagram of her standing in front of the company's logo in the lobby. Captioned it, "Grateful to be trusted with these conversations. Healing starts with honesty." I wasn't tagged, but I saw my reflection in the glass behind her. Just a blur in the distance. That part hit harder than it should have. People at work kept bringing her up for weeks. Someone said they'd started therapy after hearing her talk. Another person said she reminded them of Brené Brown. And I had to just smile and nod while trying not to scream internally. After a while, it died down. People moved on. HR brought in some nutritionist. The next month, we talked about gut health, and Jessica faded out of the company memory. But every now and then, someone still brings up that really moving talk we had last spring. And I have to pretend like I don't know the speaker used to steal my hoodies and once accused me of emotionally costing her in my sleep. So this all starts in a stupidly expensive therapist's office with gray walls and a fake plant in the corner that somehow looked more depressed than me. I was sitting on this weirdly soft couch that sunk way too much when you sat down, trying to explain why I couldn't focus at work and why my brain wouldn't shut up even when nothing was happening. I'd been going to this guy, Marcus, for like 5 months at that point. He was quiet, older, wore glasses with those little smudges in the corners, and he always wrote on a yellow legal pad like he was solving a case. Therapy was helping. Not in a magic way, but in the slow, uncomfortable way where you talk about stuff you pretend doesn't bother you, and then realize you've been dragging it around for years like a backpack full of bricks. I didn't talk much about Nate in those early sessions. We had ended things months ago, and I figured it was already in the past. But then weird stuff started happening. Subtle things at first. One week, Marcus asked me how I felt about being the less emotionally available one in my past relationship. I blinked. That wasn't a phrase I had ever used to describe myself. Or Nate. I didn't even know what that meant, honestly. I chalked it up to therapist lingo and brushed it off. The next session, he brought up a hypothetical about someone who couldn't let go of being misunderstood in a breakup. I was like, okay, maybe this is just therapy getting more pointed. But the language started shifting. It was like he suddenly had all these new ideas about who I was in the relationship, like maybe I'd been selfish or dismissive or passive-aggressive without realizing it. Not that those things couldn't be true, but the way it came up was weirdly specific. The example he used, stuff only someone close to me would know, stuff only Nate would know. Then came the journal entry. Marcus asked me to write something for homework, just a letter to my past self, what I wish I had done differently. When I came back with it the next week, he was nodding as I talked through it, but then out of nowhere he said, "Funny. I had another client who said almost exactly the same thing last week." I laughed awkwardly like, "Oh wow, small world." But then he added, "Well, his situation was remarkably similar to yours." That's when the gears started turning. I asked if the other client was around my age. Marcus gave this vague maybe. I asked if he was recently out of a relationship. Another maybe. He wouldn't break confidentiality, obviously, but the tone. It was like he wanted me to guess. So I went home and sat on it for hours, just cycling through everything. Could Nate have tracked down my therapist? Did he somehow figure out who I was seeing and get on his client list? It seemed crazy, but also not totally impossible. Nate was always that type. The kind who would act normal to your face but play chess behind the scenes. When we dated, he once scrolled through my phone when I was in the shower just to see if I'd been texting with too many exclamation marks. That's a real thing, he said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't throw stuff. But he knew how to twist things in a quiet, exhausting way that made you question if you were being dramatic. So he'd add the idea that he could show up to my therapist's office under a fake name didn't seem that far off. Still, I needed proof. I couldn't just accuse my therapist of unknowingly letting my ex spy on me. So I tested it. Next session, I made up a story. Totally fake. Said I'd run into my ex at the grocery store and that we had this emotional confrontation by the frozen pizza. I added weird details, like that he had a new tattoo of a koi fish and that he asked if I still slept with a fan on. Marcus didn't react much. Just nodded, jotted something down. Said it sounded like I were still processing. 2 weeks later, I came back and Marcus casually dropped a line about how sometimes people get tattoos after breakups to feel like they're taking control again. I froze. I hadn't said anything more about the fake story. That line came from somewhere else. It clicked. Nate had been here, was still coming here, probably under a different name, and I had no idea how long it had been happening. I asked Marcus if it was possible my ex was also a client. He got weirdly quiet, said he couldn't answer that. I pushed harder, not in a yelling way, just direct. I said, "Look, I think someone's using therapy to get in my head." He paused and then gave me this speech about parallel healing paths and how sometimes people's stories overlap in meaningful ways. It was the most nothing answer I'd ever heard. So I stopped going. I ghosted therapy. Canceled future sessions, didn't explain why. I figured if Nate wanted to play mind games, I wasn't gonna sit there and let it happen in a room I was literally paying to be safe in. It felt gross, like I'd been slowly tricked into letting someone back inside my brain without ever opening the door. Months later, a mutual friend confirmed it, totally by accident. We were catching up, and she mentioned how Nate says therapy's been good for him, especially working with older male therapists, like the one in Midvale. That was Marcus' office. Midvale. Same address. I didn't even react. Just nodded and changed the subject. What was I gonna do? Call the guy and say, Hey, remember that person who sat across from you for 5 months talking about their worst insecurities? Well, their ex was sitting in that same chair, probably taking notes. I haven't gone back to therapy since. I try to find a new one, but the trust thing, it's hard to rebuild. Every time I start filling out a new intake form, I wonder who else is gonna be in the waiting room. Who else might be playing puppet master in the background? Sometimes I still wonder what Nate said about me, what stories he told, if he played victim, if he cried, if he sat in that same sunken couch and called me controlling, or maybe he didn't talk about me at all. Maybe he just wanted to be close to where I was breaking things down, piece by piece. I'm sitting in the break room at work eating leftover pasta out of a Tupperware that melted a little in the microwave, and one of my coworkers, Alex, this guy who always smells like citrus gum and talks way too loud, goes, "Yo, is this about you?" and shoves his phone in my face. At first, I didn't know what I was looking at. It was a podcast app, some purple-looking icon I didn't recognize with a show titled Dating a Monster, Season 1. Right under it was a photo of a burning rose. Super dramatic, real edgy energy. But when I looked closer, I saw the title of the episode he had opened. Ep 3. The Narcissist Who Made Me Think I Was Crazy, Part 1. I felt my stomach sink a little. Then I saw the name in the podcast description, Brit, just Brit. Alex kept going, talking over my silence. It's wild man. She says the dude she's talking about work in tech and used to zone out during arguments like it was a nap. I was like, that's kind of your whole thing. I gave some fake laugh and said I didn't know what he was talking about. But inside I was scrambling. That night I listened, all of it, from episode 1. And yeah, it was her, Brittany. Her voice hadn't changed. She still had that low, raspy tone like she was always mid-eye roll. I hadn't heard it in over a year, but it hit me immediately. Her podcast wasn't huge or anything, just this little DIY thing she probably recorded in her bedroom, but she talked with this practiced calm that made everything sound way more legit than it was. The first 2 episodes were just set up. A whole let me introduce myself thing where she talked about her journey through healing and gave long disclaimers about how the people she mentioned were composite characters for privacy reasons. That part actually made me laugh out loud. She said that immediately followed it up by describing a guy she dated who worked in a mid-sized product team downtown, wore all black most days, and had the emotional intelligence of a toaster. So subtle. By episode 3, it was obvious. I was a monster. She never said my name, but every single story. Direct hits. She talked about how I once walked out in the middle of an argument about whether her tone was condescending. That happened. She talked about the time I forgot her birthday until the day of. Guilty. She even mentioned a specific fight we had in the parking lot outside a Thai place where she accused me of intellectual bullying, whatever that means. I remember standing there, arms crossed, while she spiraled into this monologue about how everything I said was designed to make her feel inferior. I didn't even argue back. I just waited for the Uber. And here she was, turning those moments into content. Each episode dove deeper. She played dramatic background music, like piano chords and the sound of waves crashing, while she described how she lost herself in a relationship with someone who manipulated through silence. I kept thinking this has to be illegal. It felt like I was being dissected by someone who still had my old hoodies in her drawer. People started noticing. The podcast picked up more listeners. Nothing viral, but enough that a few more people at work caught on. Someone read the show notes and pointed out that the main guy was basically a copy-paste of me. One of the interns even joked during a team lunch. Hey, don't gaslight us like that podcast guy. I laughed along, because what else was I supposed to do, admit it? I tried reaching out to her. Just one message. Said something short like, "This is messed up. You know what you're doing." She didn't reply, but she did drop a new episode 2 days later called When They Try to Silence You. That one had a whole segment about predators who smile in public and destroy in private. She said, they'll try to convince you they're just quiet, but that silence is a weapon. That line stuck with me, because she always accused me of using silence as control. But in reality, I was just trying not to escalate things. Brittany could spin anything into a battle. I learned that the hard way. The less I reacted, the more she filled the gaps with her own narrative. And now she had a mic. A few months passed and the podcast didn't stop. She started doing guest episodes. Had one with her friend from college who claimed to have watched the toxicity firsthand. The friend told the story about coming over to our apartment and seeing me refuse to make eye contact. I remember that day. I was hungover and watching a documentary about mountain goats. Apparently, that translated to emotional violence now. The worst part, she got followers, not millions, but enough. The kind of people who love throw pillows with quotes about healing and repost inspirational TikToks and all cutting people off. They left comments like, "Thank you for your bravery, and I see myself in this." Someone even wrote, "I think I dated your ex too." And she responded, "Wouldn't be surprised." It got under my skin. Not because she was lying exactly, but because of how she bent the truth. It's easy to make someone look bad when they can't talk back. I wasn't some evil mastermind. I was just a guy trying to stay sane in a relationship that never gave me room to breathe. Eventually, I stopped listening and I had to. It was messing with my head. I couldn't even go on dates without wondering if the girl had heard the podcast. I'd be sitting across from someone at a bar and catch myself saying something and then immediately overthinking it. Like, did that sound controlling? Was that a red flag moment? I became hyper aware of how I came off. I was constantly auditioning for the role of not a monster. I heard from a mutual friend that she was working on a book now, turning the podcast into a memoir. She even had a title picked out, "We Don't Talk Anymore," and that's a good thing. Real deep. I won't read it. I don't need to see the same moments repackaged into another dramatic format. I already lived them. I already read the comments. I already heard my past twisted into a season of someone else's healing arc. At this point, I've made peace with the fact that to a few thousand people online, I'm a villain they'll never meet. I'm just a story, an episode, a vibe. You know that feeling when you think everything's finally behind you? Like you finally get to stop dealing with someone, and then out of nowhere, they show back up in your life through some weird side door. Yeah, that's what happened with Zane. But he didn't come back to talk to me or even to argue. He came back through my mom. We'd been broken up for maybe 3 months when I found out. Nothing explosive had happened at the end. I just got tired of feeling like I was constantly managing his moods. Every conversation had layers. Every sentence he said had some hidden meaning. I'd say I didn't want to hang out that night and he'd be like, "Okay, cool." But with this look that made it clear it wasn't actually cool. That kind of stuff adds up. After a while, I stopped feeling like I could just be myself around him. I started keeping things to myself just to avoid triggering one of his moods. That's when I knew it wasn't working anymore. So we ended it. I told him I needed space and that I wanted to cut contact so we could both move on. He didn't take it great, but he didn't go full meltdown either. A few emotional texts, one long email about how I was walking away from something rare, and then it went quiet. I thought that was the end of it. Then one Sunday, I was at my mom's place for lunch and she casually dropped, "Oh, I saw Zane the other day." He helped me carry some boxes out of the storage unit. I blinked. I asked, "What? Why were you with Zane?" And she just said it like it was no big deal. He offered to help. He said he was in the area. I thought it was just a one-time thing. I even laughed. Like, okay, weird, but whatever. My mom's always been the type to stay polite with people. She doesn't like awkwardness. I figured he ran into her and offered help, and she went along with it to be nice. No big deal. Except then it kept happening. She started mentioning him in conversations. Casual at first. Zane said there's a new Greek place that just opened up. Or Zane fixed the settings on my laptop. One time she even said, Zane recommended this laundry detergent. Smells amazing. I was like, hold up. Why is he recommending detergent to my mom? I tried to tell her that I wasn't really comfortable with him hanging out. I didn't say he was dangerous or anything, I just said it made things weird. She looked genuinely confused. Said he was being helpful and that it wasn't about picking sides. She actually said that, like our breakup was a custody battle. From there, it only got worse. She started inviting him to stuff. Little things at first. Sunday lunch, helping with errands. Then one day she called and said, "Hey, just so you're not surprised, Zane's coming to Dad's birthday dinner." He offered to help set up the grill. That night, I showed up and he was already there, wearing an apron, flipping burgers like he was a damn host. My uncle was chatting with him about car repairs. My cousin asked if he was back together with me, and he just smiled and said, "No comment." My mom was beaming. It felt like I was the outsider in my own family. After that, I sent him a message. Nothing aggressive. Just straight up. I said, hey, I'd appreciate it if you stopped showing up to stuff and maybe gave my family some space. He didn't respond. But you know what he did do? He doubled down. Started doing small favors for my mom every week, dropping off groceries, bringing her coffee. She started saying things like, Zane helped me rearrange the living room, or Zane says you used to keep your emotions too balled up. That last one made me pause. I asked her, why would he be saying that about me? And she just shrugged and said, he just seems really concerned. He thinks you didn't always feel safe expressing yourself. I just sat there. I was like, is this real? Is my ex-boyfriend slowly trying to turn my own mom against me? And worse, is it working? Because that's what it felt like. It didn't look like manipulation on the surface. There were no obvious fights, no yelling. But the way he kept showing up, kept planting these little emotional seeds in her mind. It wasn't innocent. He knew exactly what he was doing. Zane was always good at that. When we were together, he'd say things like, I just want to understand you, while low-key making me feel like everything I did was a red flag. He never exploded. He just chipped away. And now he was doing it to someone who didn't see it coming. My mom started pushing me to talk to him. He really wants closure, she said. You should at least hear him out. I told her no. She looked disappointed. Said I was being harsh. That hit harder than I expected. The more I tried to explain why it bothered me, the more it sounded petty. Like I was the one making things tense. Meanwhile, he was just playing the nice guy role perfectly. People love nice guys, especially nice guys who bring them new dish towels and compliment their garden. Eventually, I stopped going to my mom's house for a bit. I didn't cut her off, I just made excuses. Needed space. Every time I talked to her, I was worried she'd drop another, Zane said, into the conversation. It became this weird background anxiety that made me feel crazy. Then one day, it just stopped. She mentioned he got a new girlfriend. Said they moved across town and he wasn't around as much. I just said, cool, that was it. He moved on, and with him went the weird little campaign he'd been running behind my back. I don't know if he got bored or if he felt like he won, but I hadn't seen his name pop up since. I never got an apology from my mom. I don't think she ever fully saw what was going on. To her, he was just being helpful. But I know what I saw. I know how it felt, and I'll never forget it. Next time I date someone, I'm keeping them miles away from my family, just in case they ever try to do what Zane did. There was this girl in high school, Janine, who used to doodle her crush's last name on her notebook like it was a career goal. Janine Carson, over and over again, hearts around it, stars for the dots on the eyes. We used to laugh about it in math class. She'd say she was just manifesting. I hadn't thought about that in years, until some year illegally changed her last name to mine. Not because we got married. Not because it was some romantic thing we did on a drunken Vegas trip. Nope, she did it after we broke up. Months after. Like 3 months after we'd fully gone no contact. And she didn't tell me. I had to find out through someone else. And when I did, it honestly made me feel like I'd just found a voodoo doll of myself hidden in a closet. Here's how it happened. It was a Wednesday. I remember because I was working remote and had just finished dealing with this long, stupid Zoom meeting where nobody knew how to use the mute button. I opened Instagram, just killing time, and saw a story reposted by this mutual friend. It was a picture of Samira sitting at a patio table, captioned, S. Hernandez looking like a main character today. My last name is Hernandez. I blinked, thought it was a typo or something, but then I looked closer at her profile and noticed the same thing. She had changed her display name, S. Hernandez, no hyphen, not formerly, just straight up took it like it had always been hers, like I didn't exist and she had just popped into the world that way. I clicked out of the app and sat on the edge of my bed, trying to decide if I was overreacting. Maybe it was a joke, or maybe she was trying a fake name for writing or something. I tried not to spiral. Then I did the dumbest thing possible and Googled her, opened a background check site, typed her full name in, and there it was. Name change filed, official, legal. She changed it less than 3 weeks before. I didn't even know how to feel. My brain just kind of glitched, like, who does that? I get people do weird stuff to cope after a breakup. Some people dye their hair or adopt a cat or get really into running. but legally becoming your ex's last name. That's not post-breakup sadness. That's some Lifetime movie level weird. We dated for a year. It was intense, but not in the good way. She always needed reassurance. If I was tired or quiet, she thought it meant I was about to leave. If I hung out with friends without her, she'd say I was trying to hide part of my life. And she was big on these tests, like she'd pretend to forget plans just to see if I'd remind her, or she'd talk about some guy who messaged her on Twitter just to see if I'd get jealous. I broke up with her after a long fight that started with a toothpaste cap and ended with her saying I had no emotional depth. That was the line that did it for me. I packed a duffel bag, stayed at a friend's place for a week, and we never talked after that. I blocked her on everything. I thought that was the end of the story. But apparently the story kept going without me. After I found out about the name change, I told a couple people. One of my friends thought it was hilarious. Another one just said, "Bro, that's terrifying." I kind of agree with both. Part of me was freaked out, the other part was trying to laugh so I didn't lose it. Then the email started. I got one from a company I used to freelance for. They said, "Hey, just wanted to check that this Samira Hernandez is part of your team. She listed you as a reference." That's when I realized it wasn't just for show. She was actually using my name, like out in the world. She had made it her brand. I didn't respond to the email, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. What did she tell people? That we were married and I just didn't mention it to anyone. That we were still together but secretly. That it was just some weird coincidence. Then my cousin texted me a screenshot. She had posted a photo of a fake wedding bouquet and wrote, "Never needed a man to make me a wife." He asked if I had something to tell them. I just stared at the screen and said nope, nothing to say. The craziest part was how calm she looked in all the photos. Like nothing about what she was doing was unhinged. She was smiling, journaling, posting captions like "softness is strength," and tagging herself as Mrs. H. People were commenting things like, "Love this era for you, and you deserve this peace." They had no idea she was out here legally cosplaying our dead relationship like it was a lifestyle. I never reached out. Not once. I thought about it, trust me. Thought about sending a message like, "This is insane. Change it back." But what was the point? She clearly wanted a reaction. She wanted to be in my head, and I wasn't going to give her that. It's been a year now. She still uses the name. It's on her LinkedIn, her resume, even her Etsy shop where she sells handmade candles with names like Lunar Boundaries and Echoes of the Self. Every now and then, I get a random DM from someone I don't know asking, "Hey, were you and Samir ever married?" I just ignore it. What I've realized is some people don't want closure. They want to rewrite the story completely. And if they can't do it with you, they'll do it around you. She couldn't make the relationship work, so she made herself into the ending she wanted. Changed the name. Told the world it meant something. Moved on with a version of us that only existed in her head. I still wonder what she tells people when they ask. Maybe she says I'm dead. Maybe she says it's a spiritual thing. Maybe she just shrugs and acts mysterious. Either way, I'm not part of the narrative anymore. Just the foundation she built her little fantasy on top of. Anyway, I still check public records once in a while, just in case she changes it again. This whole thing started with a clipboard and some recycled paper flyers. That's how innocent it looked. Just a stack of bright-colored flyers on the community center bulletin board next to piano lessons and missing cat posters. I wasn't even looking for something serious. I just wanted to get out of my apartment. I'd been feeling stuck. You know that restless feeling where you hate all your playlists and keep opening the fridge just to close it again. That was me for like 2 straight weeks. So when I saw the flyer for this local volunteer group that met on Saturdays to clean up city parks and do donation drives, I figured why not. The first couple of meetups were solid. Chill people, easy tasks, good weather. It was the kind of thing where everyone shows up in sweatshirts and someone always brings free muffins. I didn't even talk that much. I just liked being around other people without having to explain my whole life. It gave me something to do that didn't involve staring at a screen. No pressure, no expectations. And then Tyler showed up. I hadn't seen him since we broke up almost a year before. And honestly, the breakup wasn't even the worst I've had. It wasn't explosive. It was one of those slow, dull ones where you both just stop caring enough to fight. We dated for about 9 months, and it was good at first. A little intense, but still good. Then it turned into this draining, codependent thing where every conversation felt like a therapy session that neither of us signed up for. I ended it. He cried a little, tried to make it deep, said I was afraid of intimacy. I ignored it and moved on. So when I saw him walk into the volunteer circle that Saturday, holding a reusable water bottle and wearing that same old beanie he used to leave at my place, I didn't panic. I just nodded. Said hey. He said hey back. Real normal. I figured, okay, we're adults. We can share a sidewalk and pass out canned goods like nothing happened. But then the weirdness started. First thing I noticed was that he didn't act like he knew me. Not just that he wasn't friendly. He acted like he had never seen me before in his life. When people introduced us, he just nodded along like we were strangers. At first, I thought he was being dramatic, like maybe this was his way of punishing me for the breakup. Whatever, I didn't care that much. But then it got worse. The next week, I showed up and people were acting different. Not obviously hostile, just off. Less eye contact, less small talk. One of the group organizers, this super nice guy named Daryl, kind of avoided me. I brushed it off. Maybe I was just overthinking it. But by the third week, I knew something was up. That Saturday, I walked in and got pulled aside by one of the other organizers, Julia. She looked uncomfortable, like someone had just asked her to fire their own cousin. She said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" We stepped away from the group and she said, "I just want you to know this isn't personal, but we had a few concerns brought up about you." I was like, "What kind of concerns?" She paused for a second and then said, "There were some things said about a past situation involving physical aggression. Someone said you had a history of making people feel unsafe." I literally laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so out of nowhere that I thought maybe she was joking. I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said she couldn't go into detail, but someone had brought it up, and they were taking it seriously because they wanted to keep the group a safe environment. I asked if someone in the group had said it. She just looked at me and said, "We can't name names." Right then I knew it was Tyler. There was no one else in the group who knew me outside of those meetups. No one else who would even have the ability to make up something personal like that. And Tyler, he was standing off by the water station, talking to someone like this whole thing wasn't happening. I tried to defend myself. Told Julia it wasn't true, that I had no history of anything like that it sounded like someone was making stuff up. She nodded like she believed me, but then said, "We just need to hit pause for now, until things settle." So that was it. I was out. I walked back to my car completely stunned. Just sat there for a while staring at the wheel. It didn't feel real. Like, how do you get fake canceled from a volunteer group over something that never happened? Over the next few days, I started putting things together, little comments people had made, a weird vibe I hadn't picked up on at first. Tyler had been there behind the scenes, slowly laying the groundwork for this whole story. I didn't know exactly what he said, but based on the fallout, it was serious. He didn't just lie. He framed me. And it worked because it was subtle. He didn't storm in and say I was abused. He probably just said vague stuff like, "I had a really tough breakup, and I just want people to be aware." Or, "Some things happened that made me feel unsafe." Just enough to plant the seed. Just enough to make people whisper. I thought about confronting him, but what would that do? If he was bold enough to make up something like that, he'd just spin whatever I said into more proof. See how reactive he gets. That kind of thing. You can't win with people who rewrite the story mid-scene. So instead, I just kept my head down. Found a different group, a food bank in another part of the city. Smaller crowd. No one knew me there. I told the new organizer straight out that I was just looking for something quiet to get involved with, and she didn't ask any follow-ups. I still think about it, though. Not because I'm bitter about the group. I can live without sorting soup cans once a week. It's more the principle. Tyler didn't just want space. He wanted to rewrite who I was in the minds of people I didn't even know yet. That's a different kind of manipulation. That's someone who isn't just hurt. That's someone who wants control. And the wildest part, he never reached out, never messaged, never defended himself. Because he didn't need to. His whole plan was to quietly take me out of a space that had nothing to do with him, just because I left him, just because he couldn't stand that I moved on. Anyway, if you ever see a guy at a donation drive wearing a Navy hoodie, talking about emotional safety while labeling boxes of pasta, maybe ask a few extra questions before you trust him. I used to hang out on this one forum after work, nothing crazy, just a quiet place where people shared random thoughts, life stuff, movie takes, whatever. It was low-key and kind of wholesome. I never posted much, mostly lurked, but I liked it because no one knew each other in real life. There was this unspoken rule that it was a chill zone. You could vent about your boss or ask if your weird dream meant anything without getting roasted. It felt safe, until I found Amanda's blog. And yeah, I know how that sounds. Dramatic. But I'm not joking when I say that reading her blog made me feel like someone had bugged my entire past and then printed it out for strangers. Amanda was my ex, obviously. We dated for just under a year. She was really into astrology and vintage journals and always had a playlist for whatever emotional state she was in. Her apartment smelled like cloves and sadness. Things started passionate, like almost love bomb territory, but at the time I didn't recognize it. It felt nice. She made me feel like I was the center of her life, but then it flipped. She started collecting our fights like they were memories worth framing. If we argued, she'd write about it. Not in a diary. I mean full-on Google Docs with timestamps. She once wrote a reflection letter after I told her I was too tired to go to her coworker's art show. The letter was 3 pages long. Printed. She gave it to me in an envelope. I should have left then. Anyway, after we broke up, and that was my call, she did what I thought was the usual sad breakup spiral. A few dramatic texts, one deleted Instagram account, then silence. That was almost a year ago. Then last winter, I'm scrolling through the forum I mentioned earlier, and someone posted something saying, "This blog is wild. Anyone else finding these super relatable?" I clicked the link, expecting a funny rant about roommates or something. But instead, it takes me to a blog called The Emotional Survival Series. And on the homepage, right there in the first post, is a story titled The Dishwasher Fight, Surviving Pattern of Neglect. I read the first paragraph, froze. It was about me. She didn't name me, but she didn't need to. It described a fight we had, almost word for word. I remembered it clear as day. It was about how I loaded the dishwasher. Literally, that was the fight. She got upset because I put the mugs on the wrong side. It turned into a whole argument about shared effort and weaponized incompetence. I remember her storming off mid-sentence and texting me from the other room. And here it was on a blog, being presented as this emotional milestone in someone's recovery story. I scrolled through the rest of the site. It was all there. Every fight we had. Every disagreement, every awkward moment, every passive-aggressive text. Written like some self-help memoir where I was the antagonist. The stories weren't straight-up lies, but they were twisted just enough to paint me as the root of every bad feeling she'd ever had. She turned arguments into traumas. She added dramatic language to small moments, called them cycles of relational harm and patterns of psychological dismissal. She called me the ghost mirror. That was her name for me in the blog. I guess it was supposed to be poetic or mysterious, but it became a whole thing. She'd write posts like, "The ghost mirror made me feel like I only existed when he needed comfort," or "The ghost mirror's silence taught me more about loneliness than solitude ever could." She had quotes from books, flowery intros, mood board colleges. She made it look like a therapist-approved healing process, but it was really just an emotional tell-all dressed up like literature. And somehow it got popular. People started sharing it. Not huge numbers, but enough. Enough that I started seeing her posts linked in threads I followed. One person called it the most important blog they'd read all year. Another person said, "I swear I dated the ghost mirror too." That one really got to me. Like my worst moments, some exaggerated, some real, were now part of a collective memory I didn't sign up for. I started noticing weird vibes in other spaces too. Forums I'd used to post on. Subreddits where I gave casual advice. I'd see little comments that felt pointed. People saying things like, "This sounds like what Amanda wrote about," or getting ghost mirror vibes here. One guy even DM'd me to say he figured out I was him. I asked what he meant and he just replied, "Hope you're getting help." I thought about reaching out to her, just to say, "Can you not do this?" But I didn't. I knew if I messaged her, she'd probably screenshot it and make it into a new post titled, "When the ghost mirror comes knocking." I could already see it in my head. So I kept reading. Against my better judgment, I checked the blog every few days. It was like poking a bruise. I hated it, but I couldn't stop. She had this series going, 12 Emotional Echoes, where each post was centered around a different fight we had, but turned into a deep philosophical lesson. One was about me forgetting to text her goodnight. Another about a road trip where I picked the playlist and she said I controlled the vibe. And every single post ended with some grand statement about growth. Like, I'm finally learning that I am not someone's silence. Stuff like that. Her readers ate it up. They thought she was some kind of emotional truth teller. What killed me was knowing that some of the people reading it were probably in the same online spaces I hung out in. People I joked with. People I shared music recommendations with. And now they were reading a heavily edited version of me, written by someone who used to leave passive-aggressive sticky notes on my laptop because I left crumbs on the couch. Eventually, I stopped checking. I had to. It was messing with my head too much. I still think about it, though. About how easy it is to become a character in someone else's healing arc. And once you're there, it doesn't matter what actually happened. They get to tell the story. They get the blog, the audience, the applause. Meanwhile, I just get the nickname. I was back in school because I thought taking a few night classes would help me figure things out. I'd hit that weird in-between zone where your job feels fake, your hobbies don't really do anything for you anymore, and everyone you know seems way more confident than they actually are. I figured why not take something practical but still chill. I landed on a gender studies elective. Sounded like a solid combo of relevant and low stress. It was a small class, 20 people, maybe less. We met twice a week at 6:30 in this old building that smelled like dusty coffee and pencil shavings. The professor was this soft-spoken dude in his late 30s who always wore chunky sweaters and said, "Let's unpack that every 10 minutes." It was all good. Everyone was cool, respectful, a little awkward. The kind of class where half the people had notebooks and the other half just sat quietly, absorbing. And then Jake walked in. I hadn't seen him in over a year. We broke up the summer before, and it wasn't a clean split. At first, he made it seem like he was on board with the breakup. Then came the messages, the fake apologies, the vague threats that didn't really sound like threats, but still made my stomach twist. He wasn't violent or loud, just incredibly persistent. Like, he popped up the same bar I was at coincidentally more than once. Once, he sent me a playlist called If You Still Feel Something. It was 3 hours long, and all of it sounded like sad music you hear and a deleted scene of a breakup montage. So, yeah, things didn't end smoothly. And now here he was, walking into my class like it was nothing. He looked exactly the same. Smug face, half hoodie, that same way he always carried his bag like he was too cool to wear it properly. He made eye contact with me the second he walked in. Held it just a little too long. I pretended not to react, but my body definitely did. My chest tightened, and I had that buzzing feeling in the back of my skull like I was about to be dragged back into something I worked really hard to crawl out of. I convinced myself it was a coincidence. People can sign up for the same class, right? Maybe he didn't even know I was in it when he registered. But that theory didn't last long. Because after that first day, he started making his presence real obvious. In every class, whenever the professor brought up anything remotely related to feminism, emotional labor, power dynamics, anything, Jake had a comment. Not just any comment. He'd say stuff that was just slightly off. Like devil's advocate nonsense that had no real point except to get under someone's skin. He'd say things like, "Don't you think it's unfair to always assume men are in the wrong? Or isn't it kind of sexist to exclude men from conversations about toxic relationships?" He'd do it with this calm tone that made it seem like he was just being rational, but everyone in the room could feel it. He wasn't curious, he was provoking. And the worst part, he'd always look at me when he said that stuff. He never directly mentioned me, never said anything personal, but I knew. I knew that when he said, "Some people manipulate language to make themselves seem like victims," he wasn't just talking. He was calling me out in front of a group of strangers without ever using my name. The professor was clearly uncomfortable with him, but didn't want to shut him down too hard. He'd say things like, "Let's try to stay constructive," or "Maybe we can focus on listening." Jake would nod and act like he was totally on board, then wait 5 minutes and say something like, "I'm just asking questions." Classic. Outside of class, he started posting weird tweets. I don't follow him, but people sent them to me. One said, "Funny how some people think taking a women's studies class makes them morally superior. It's still just a classroom. You're not a saint because you can quote bell hooks." He never tagged me. He never had to. A couple weeks in, I mentioned it to the professor privately. Not to tell, just to say it was starting to feel personal. He said he couldn't do much unless something overt happened, and that Jake technically hadn't broken any rules. I knew he meant well, but it was clear this was going to be one of those handle it yourself situations. So I did. I started speaking up more. Not to argue with him, just to reclaim the space a little. When he'd make his weird provocations, I'd jump in right after and give an actual counterpoint. Nothing dramatic, just solid, grounded stuff. I quote the readings, reference real studies. Made it clear I wasn't afraid of him. Other people in class started backing me up too. You could feel the shift. He still talked, but he wasn't dominating the energy anymore. He noticed. One day after class, he tried to corner me outside the building. Asked if we could have a real talk. I said no. I didn't even look at him. Just kept walking. He called after me, "You're still pretending, huh?" That one sentence stuck with me. Pretending what? That he didn't wreck my sense of peace for months. That I didn't feel safer when he was blocked and gone. I never answered. Never looked back. He dropped the class about 2 weeks before the final. He didn't show up, didn't turn anything in. The professor said he withdrew, no explanation. Part of me felt relief, but the other part was still unsettled. He'd done what he came to do. He'd inserted himself into my space again, threw off my balance, and left without facing anything, just like before. The thing that gets me most is how people like him use structure to their advantage. He didn't yell. He didn't stalk. He just showed up, raised his hand, and poisoned the room a little bit at a time. And unless you were paying attention, it all looked harmless. I passed the class. Got an A, learned a lot too, about the actual material and also about how far someone will go just to feel like they're still part of your story, even if they have to sneak in through the back door of a night school classroom to do it. It was raining the morning, I found out. Not like a movie rain, not dramatic or poetic, just annoying. The kind where your socks get wet inside your shoes and your hoodie starts to smell like wet towels. I was standing in line at the corner coffee shop, waiting on a lukewarm Babel and some coffee I didn't even want, when I checked my phone and saw a text from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. It just said, "Hey, are you okay?" I heard what happened. I stared at the message for a good 30 seconds before replying. Heard what? From who? No answer. Then, while I was sitting at the window seat pretending to care about my food, another text came in. Different number, same vibe. Don't want to make it worse, but I saw Hannah's post. Stay safe. That one had a screenshot. It was a blurry Instagram story, the kind people throw up real quick when they want it to vanish in 24 hours. Black background, white text, and the words, "It's terrifying when someone won't leave you alone. When the same person keeps showing up. When you have to go to the police just to feel okay again. I'm tired of pretending." Then 3 emojis, broken heart, rain cloud, and a lock. Real subtle. No names, no context. But everyone who knew us would have known what she meant. And that was the point. Hannah was never one for subtle. When we dated, she posted everything. First date. Posted. Random inside jokes that no one understood but us. On the grid. Arguments. Turned into cryptic quotes with aesthetic font and blurry mirror selfies. She didn't just share life. She curated it. Like her whole personality was a playlist she updated weekly for other people to feel sad to. We were only together for 6 months. Honestly, it felt longer. She was the type who made everything urgent. If I took more than 10 minutes to reply to a message, she'd followed up with, "Are you mad at me?" Or worse, just start spiraling and posting sad TikToks. At first, I thought it was just part of her being open with her feelings, but eventually it got exhausting. Every conversation had to turn into something bigger. If I said I needed a night to myself, it became a lecture about abandonment. If I didn't repost one of her selfies, she'd ask why I didn't want people to know. The breakup was messy. Not a yelling match, but still heavy, she cried. I tried to stay calm. Told her I wasn't in a place to be the person she needed. That I felt like I was losing myself trying to keep up with her emotional roller coasters. She said I was cold. Said I'd regret it. Then she blocked me. Or at least I thought she did. Turns out she didn't block me. She just removed me from her main account and switched to close friends mode so she could post about me without me seeing. Real slick. What I didn't know is that for weeks, maybe months, she'd been implying online that someone was stalking her. That someone was following her, texting from different numbers, showing up outside places she went. And guess who that someone was supposed to be? I didn't find out until that rainy day with a bagel. After I saw the screenshot, I started digging. Had to borrow someone else's account to check her page since I was still ghosted from it. And what I found actually made me feel sick. There were multiple posts, story after story, where she said stuff like, "You won't stop," or "It's scary when your past becomes your present again." One post had a screenshot of a text message that said, "Miss you," from an unknown number. She blurred the number but left just enough of it visible that people who knew me could guess. The comments were all supportive. "We're here for you. Stay safe, Queen." I fighting myself. And I just sat there reading it like I was watching someone turn me into a character in their trauma movie without asking. I hadn't texted her once since we broke up. Hadn't driven past her place. Hadn't even liked one of her posts from a burner. I was out. Fully out. I made sure of it because I knew how dramatic she could get and I didn't want anything misinterpreted. So to see all this was just insane. Then it got worse. A few days later, I got a call from a restricted number. Let it go to voicemail. Listened to it. It was an officer from the local precinct saying they'd received a report and wanted to speak with me about a harassment complaint. My stomach dropped. I called back, explained calmly that I had no contact with Hannah. They said the report was vague, just that she felt unsafe and that she believed she was being followed by someone she used to date. I asked if there was any actual proof or if I was under investigation. They said not yet, that it was just a preliminary thing, but I should avoid contact just to be safe. So now I was in a situation where someone could accuse me of being a stalker without showing a single piece of evidence, and all I could do was sit there and wait for it to blow over. My hands were shaking for hours after that call. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to blast her publicly, but I didn't, because then she really could use it. Twist it. Screenshot it. Make it look like I was trying to silence her. So instead, I did nothing. I went dark. Deleted my socials for a while. Took my name off anything public. Word spread slowly like it always does online. Some people messaged me directly, asked what was going on. I told the truth. A few believed me. A few didn't say anything, which says enough on its own. I later heard that she told people she never named names, and that anyone who thought it was about me was just making assumptions, like she hadn't dropped every clue short of tagging me directly. She even told one person I had a guilty conscience if I was so defensive. Classic trap. Eventually, it died down. People moved on. New drama showed up in their feeds. But it stuck with me. That weird fear that something as simple as silence could be turned into guilt. That not saying anything made it easier for someone to rewrite the ending however they wanted. I've read enough stories now to know I'm not the only one it's happened to. Doesn't make it easier, though. It started with a selfie. Not mine, not even Ridz's. It was a random post on my new girlfriend's feed. Just her and a couple of friends out at some rooftop spot, holding cocktails, city lights in the background. Harmless, normal. But when I looked closer at the tag list, there it was at Rids0208, just sitting there like it belonged. I double-tapped the photo, stared at it for a second, then put my phone down. But something about it itched. I didn't reach out. I didn't want to look weird or paranoid. But that name, Rids, kept popping up. Like a slow leak in the ceiling. It didn't flood the room, but you knew something was off. Backstory. Fine. Rids and I dated for 8 months. It was intense and weirdly isolating. The kind of relationship that makes you feel like you're in a competition, even though no one ever says it out loud. If I was happy, she had to be happier. If I was tired, she was exhausted. It was always one-upping, always emotional games. Always this low-level tension that made every small thing feel like a test. When it ended, it was messy but not loud. We just stopped responding to each other. Like, stopped mid-argument and never finished. One day I was typing a reply, paused, and never sent it. And she never followed up. That was the weird part. It felt unfinished. But I took the silence and ran with it. So when I met my current girlfriend, I wasn't bringing baggage. I wasn't comparing. I wasn't even thinking about Rids anymore. I didn't expect her to show up again. Especially not like this. It started slow. Rids commented on a few of my girlfriend's posts. Just casual stuff like, "so cute," or "love this." Nothing aggressive. Nothing that screamed trauma. But then she followed her. Then they started liking each other's stories. Then, out of nowhere, they were hanging out. I saw another post, this time just the two of them at thrift market, and I felt my stomach turn. Still, I didn't say anything. I didn't want to seem insecure. I figured maybe they met through mutuals or clicked over something random. I kept telling myself it wasn't weird. Then I started hearing low comments. We'd be watching a movie and my girlfriend would say something like, "Rids told me this scene reminded her of something you once said." Or I'd mention something I used to do in high school, and she'd say, "Oh yeah, Rids said you played it down, but you were actually kind of cocky back then." At first I laughed. I even shrugged it off, but it kept happening. Subtle little inserts, like she was being fed pieces of my past, not by me, but by someone else. Rids wasn't just popping up in her social life. She was rewriting me. One night we were talking about some old trip I went 9 years ago, and my girlfriend said, Rids said that trip was kind of the beginning of the end for you too. I froze. That trip was something I hadn't even mentioned to her. I asked how it came up. She said, "Oh, we were just talking." I asked about your past relationships. I didn't know how to explain what was happening without sounding paranoid, so I just nodded, let it sit. But inside, I was boiling. Rids had inserted herself into my new relationship without permission, and worse, she was building a version of me behind my back. She wasn't texting me. She wasn't reaching out. She was using her version of our past and feeding it directly to the person I was trying to move forward with. And I know what kind of storyteller Rids is. She's not an outright liar. She's a curator. She takes moments, edits out the parts where she was wrong, and adds emotional music to the rest. She's the type who'll say, "He left me hanging," but forget to mention the 5 times I tried to talk and she walked away mid-sentence. She builds narratives that feel real enough to stick even if they're bent out of shape. I finally asked my girlfriend directly, "Do you think it's weird that you and my ex are suddenly best friends?" She blinked, caught off guard, and said, I didn't think about it like that. She's cool. She was really open with me." That's when it clicked. Rids hadn't just become her friend. She'd become the expert on me. She positioned herself as the person who could give insight, warnings, helpful context. And my girlfriend, who had never seen that side of her, just accepted it as kindness. I sat with that for days, didn't sleep much, kept replaying conversations, wondering how many times I'd been unknowingly compared to my past self, to the version Rids was pushing. It felt like I was being stalked emotionally, like someone was standing behind me in every room, whispering a script I didn't write. The final straw was this dumb little dinner party. My girlfriend invited a few people over. Rids was one of them. I didn't even know she was coming until she walked in with a bottle of wine and said, surprised to see me, with that fake grin she always used when she wanted to seem unbothered. The whole night was uncomfortable. She dominated every conversation, made jokes at all my habits, dropped old references, said things like, "You haven't changed, have you?" in front of everyone, and no one else knew how loaded it all was. They just laughed, thought it was quirky ex-banter. I barely said anything the whole time. After she left, I finally broke. Told my girlfriend everything. How Rids worked, how calculated she could be, how it wasn't a coincidence that she got close. My girlfriend looked torn. She said, "I didn't know it was that deep." I told her it wasn't her fault, but I needed some space to figure out how I felt, because I wasn't just hurt, I felt invaded. I don't know what Rids wanted exactly. Maybe control. Maybe to still feel involved. Maybe she wanted me to feel like no matter where I went, she'd always be one step ahead, rewriting me before I got there. Whenever it was, it worked, for a while, at least. We're still figuring things out, me and my girlfriend. She says she had no idea it would mess with me this much. I believe her. But it doesn't change the fact that I'm still cleaning up someone else's version of myself. I guess that's what people like Rids do. They don't just leave, they linger. Quietly, through people, through stories, through connections they make behind your back.